Happy Friday, everyone. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. Actually, Carol Jean, you're starting first, but that's okay. I'll stop sharing in a minute. Welcome. I'm super excited. This is the third of the three-part session that we have hosted on um, complexity and stress and now sleep. And they really all go together, but trying to jam it all into one session and give you all the info was not going to work. So we're breaking it down into three. What we've got for you as you're talking through this is Carol Jean and I want you to have this information so that you can know if this resonates with you. Go look at your human design chart. How does this feel? And then we do have something that we're offering called the Leadership Performance Intensive. And again, only if it feels aligned for you, we're talking about it because some of this stuff, as we've been teaching it, this was in other classes I was teaching. We had Chief Sisters raise their hand. They're like, I just need help like one on one. I need you to do this for me. I need to go deeper on this. But like it is very custom. So that's why, even though we're teaching these classes, we also built something at the end that we'll share on the leadership because some of this is so specific. And again, only if it resonates with you, we'd love to invite you into that. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't have shared my screen. I got all excited. But go ahead, Carol Jean. I will let you take it over. And so Carol Jean's going to start with the sleep on the wellness side, well-being side. And then I am going to dive into the human design side as well. So we're going to plug both of those in together. So take it away, Carol Jean.
All right. I'm going to make sure I've got everything. I figured out how to blow it up a little bigger this time from where I was. So I was like, we can't really see that very well, can we? So we're diving into the sleep element and how this actually impacts our leadership. And Michelle is tying in the amazing layer of human design because that's where we get really surgically precise with things. Because sleep is really not always what we think it is. So let's start with something many leaders get wrong. Sleep is not a passive activity. It's a leadership system. It's part of our leadership ecosystem. Because sleep is the first system that's disrupted in stress and burnout. And in my 4-year research study, when I asked participants from this huge list of warning signs, what was the first thing you started to notice or what really happened first? And they were all like, oh, my sleep got so jacked up. It was really bad. And sadly, this is the bitter pill to swallow. It is the last system to restore in recovery. So here's the kicker most people miss. When we get stressed, our human bias is to add solutions, not subtract complexity. We talked about that last week, the subtraction bias that we have. Anytime humans go to solve a problem, we're trying to add things to it to fix it rather than removing things. And the same thing happens in our sleep. So you end up with more tools, more routines, more advice, more complexity. And what happens? Your sleep suffers first. So most leaders think, I'll rest when it's convenient, but sleep doesn't work that way. A lot of times I'll hear, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? I know we've all said it or heard it at some point. And it's showing where our priority around sleep is because it's what we've been exposed to in that hustle culture that we are in. It's also deeply personal. Sleep is very personal, and Michelle's going to get into those really personal elements of it. And how you sleep is shaped by your personality, by your nervous system, and your learned environment. How your brain and body approach sleep and how it feels productive and normal to you. But it may not actually restore you. I know, that's like the hard part, right? You're like, well, what the heck? I'm doing all this stuff. So today I want you to leave with a very different perspective. That sleep is intelligent feedback, not failure. That's a big part. It's intelligent feedback. So let's talk about how sleep actually works. Let's get real practical with this. Most people think sleep is about hours. Oh, I got 8 hours of sleep last night. I am jamming. And that is a total myth. Sleep is actually about cycles. There are 4 or 5 phases in each sleep cycle per night, depending on the research that you look at. Some say 4, some say 5. And to truly restore, you need 5 to 7 full uninterrupted sleep cycles. Each cycle lasts anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes. Your total hours vary by age, by your stress level, and health, a lot of other components as well. But your nervous system does not compromise on the cycles. That is the root of sleep. And I'll go into some reasons why. We'll get into a little bit more detail. So here's what breaks your sleep cycle. And this was the thing that it broke my heart when I learned this, when I really went deep into studying sleep, because my background is in stress point learning, vision science, and neuroscience. And as I was looking at how does sleep impact our visual cortex processing, and I really did this huge, deep study in sleep, this broke my heart. Because I thought I was getting plenty of hours of sleep, but I was still waking up feeling pretty crappy. But I didn't realize there were things happening throughout the night that were actually breaking the cycles, and that the cycles were starting over. So what breaks cycles? Sleep arousals. So we have two kinds of disruptions in sleep. We have arousals, and this is like when you partially wake, but you fall back asleep quickly. You may not even remember arousals in your sleep. Then we have sleep disruptions. This is when you fully wake up and it takes some time to return back to sleep. And each time one of these disruptions happens, your system starts back at phase 1. So if you had been asleep and let's say you made it to phase 3 in your sleep cycle, and then you had an arousal or you had a disruption, whoop, it starts all over again. You go back to phase 1. You don't pick up where you left off. This really, really upset me, y'all. That's why long sleep doesn't always equate to restorative sleep. And for leaders, for us, this is critical because fragmented sleep compounds stress. It reduces your clarity. It reduces your processing speed. It disrupts your emotions so you can't remain cool as a cucumber like you'd like to, maybe. You drop something or the kids do something and all of a sudden you're like, hair trigger. That's what happens. And it accelerates burnout. So if you've been at this subtle simmer, not realizing you've normalized a particular layer of burnout, your sleep is making it worse when you're not getting that good quality sleep. So let's talk about cortisol. Cortisol gets a really bad rap as the big stress hormone, but it is one of the most critical chemical elements of your sleep-wake cycle. We have what's called the cortisol curve. And first thing in the morning, your cortisol is at its highest. It's supposed to be at its highest because that makes you wake up. You're alert. You're ready to tackle the day. But stress can disrupt the natural cortisol curve. And it disrupts that wake and sleep cycles. So your cortisol curve may not be at its highest in the morning. I have even had clients whose cortisol levels are exceedingly high in the morning and they wake up mad. They wake up pissed off with the world. And I mean, these are things that we don't think about being this chemical imbalance in our sleep-wake cycle. You just think, I may not be a morning person. And if you wake up super groggy and it may take you 3 or 4 cups of coffee and 2 or 3 hours, maybe longer to get going, that can also be your cortisol curve being disrupted. And here's an important key, because if cortisol is what's waking us up and getting us jamming for the day, melatonin is the chemical that's released by your pineal gland it's activated first thing in the morning, right? And that's when we are exposed to natural sunlight. That's when it activates the pineal gland. So 14 hours later, we're producing the level of melatonin because as our cortisol curve dips throughout the day, that's natural, what it's supposed to do, then the melatonin takes over and moves us into our sleep cycle. And so these are the things that are really important, but they get disrupted through stress and chronic stress and burnout. And what we don't always understand sometimes too is if you wake up And maybe you have a consistent wake up between 1 and 4 a.m. Maybe you wake up and you're just like, it's a disruption. You are awake, you are alert. Oftentimes, that's an adrenal spike and it's a response to a drop in your blood sugar. Your body senses this as a life threatening occurrence. And you wake up immediately and your body's going, we need glucose, we need to eat. So if you wake up and you're like, I'm actually hungry, that can be one of the things. I'm in perimenopause, so there's some other things that happen there as well that can disrupt in your 1 to 4 a.m. But most often it is your blood sugar regulation. And so the sleep cycles are really vital to removing toxins and proteins that build up during the day. And that's called the glymphatic system. And what happens is we go to sleep, and it's not in REM sleep, but it's in that deep phases, that 3, 4, depending on where you're looking, that phase 3 or 4 of sleep, where chemicals are released and our cells shrink in our brain by about 60%. And that allows cerebral spinal fluid to wash up from our spinal column into our brain, because our brain is typically a closed system. And so what happens is that cerebral spinal fluid is allowed to come in and it wraps around the cells and it pulls out the toxins and the proteins, that beta amyloid that build up throughout the day. And what happens is it's then flushed out of the brain into the body's circulatory system for elimination. But this only occurs when we are experiencing those full sleep cycles. And this system is crucial for preventing that buildup of proteins that are linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia. And it's making adequate quality sleep vital for our brain health. Toxin and protein buildup can block the pineal gland's function because it gets buildup around it, and it's a teeny tiny little pine nut shaped gland in the center of your brain. And when that buildup gets around that, it makes functioning and adequate production of melatonin reduce. These are some really important things I wanted you to understand about sleep and why we're talking about it today. Because it's not just a whole bunch of like, oh, I need to sleep better. I need to get more hours of sleep, right? We've already said, it's about the cycles. So here's the link to what I teach about stress and complexity and our well-being. So our stress profiles show how you respond under pressure, right? We all have a way that we respond and process stress. And then our complexity levels, is what we talked about last week, they show how the stress shows up in your life systems, right? Because complexity is an extension of us trying to fix the problem of stress. And when we look at our sleep disruption, it's the first tangible indicator that stress and complexity are at work together. When we understand how stress shapes sleep, we see that disruption, it's not failure. It's simply adaptation. Your sleep profile shows your system's current strategy for recovery under conditions that feel safe for your system. Not good or bad, just informative. So think about this. Most people, and if you have ever experienced trauma, or you have had a disruptive event, or maybe you're in an environment. Sometimes this even happens like when we're traveling for work and we're staying at a hotel. Maybe there's a lot of noise. Maybe it's just a different environment. And on a subconscious level, on our nervous system level, we don't feel safe. How well do you sleep away from home? How well do you sleep in environments where somehow you don't feel safe? The truth is, you don't. So let's look at the snapshots. The sleep profile snapshot, and I put a link in the chat for y'all, it evaluates how you approach and experience sleep, because you have a sleep personality and it's not permanent. You may move between profiles across your life cycle or depending on the season of life that you're in. But awareness lets you adapt your approach in a way that respects and supports your nervous system and restores your energy. Because during sleep, we experience one of the most critical operations for our long-term neurological well-being, And that's that removal of toxins, right? We talked about that. Because during non-REM sleep, that's where all of that goodness is taking place. And if we aren't aware of what our sleep profile is, how we actually approach sleep, then we have no way to really strategically approach putting in supports that are going to help us get that sleep. And why is it so important? Because sleep affects our cognitive health. It's essential for clearing harmful proteins that build up during those waking hours. It's how we are able to hold more than one thought at a time. Like for multitasking folks, there is no true multitasking in a neuroscience standpoint. However, we can hold more things in our brain at once when we are in a good optimum steady state of cognitive health. The other thing sleep does is it stores your long-term memories. Now, this was something during the research when I went into the interview portion where I was asking, do you have sections or experiences you look back in your life where you have times where you just don't really remember anything? It's real fuzzy. It takes a while to kind of pull the memories. And what's really bad is if maybe somebody said, oh, do you remember when we did this? And you're like, I have no clue what you're talking about. But you're like, and you're like, please keep talking so I'll remember this, because it's maybe somebody you really care about or somebody you love. And you're nodding and you're going, and they're telling you about the experience that you had together and you have no clue what they're talking about. What's worse is that sometimes I had this happen. They show you a picture and you're with them in the place where they're talking about and you have no recollection of this experience. This often has been occurring in your life where you have those sections where you don't really remember some things easily, or it takes a lot to bring it back. That's when your sleep has been most disrupted, where your stress and your burnout has been elevated. So if you felt like you were losing your mind or you just can't remember things, this is why. And the other thing is deep sleep. The system is most active during deep sleep, highlighting why our quality rest is crucial to our brain health and our relationships, because it sucks when you can't remember something about somebody you love. It really does. So today, I'll walk you through 5 sleep profiles. And I'm just going to give you the quick overview. We have 5 different types of sleep profiles. And we're going to go into the busy brain owl, the restless roamer, your sleep fortress, your dreamy drifter, and our optimum steady state sleeper. So let's start with our busy brain owl. I love our busy brain owls. So our busy brain owl, this is like your mind won't stand down. It is like you have got 20 tabs, 5 tracks of music, and it is all jamming the second your head hits the pillow, right? You finally lie down, your body is exhausted, you have had a day. But the moment your head hits the pillow, your brain starts a second shift. You replay conversations. You're rewriting emails. You are solving tomorrow's problems twice, not once. You're gonna, oh no, maybe I missed something. Let me go back and rethink that one again. And it doesn't feel chaotic. It really doesn't. It feels like you're being responsible. It feels like, I'm preemptively thinking through all the things so I don't miss anything. Because somewhere your system learned that vigilance equals safety. High responsibility leaders often develop this pattern. I was definitely a busy brain owl person at one season in my life. So if you're there, I feel you. Because it's important to understand that your sleep isn't broken. Your brain just hasn't been released from duty. So in an optimum steady state shift, how do you take the busy brain owl, right? And how do you move it to that optimum steady state of sleeping? Your mental clarity happens by day, not at midnight. Even though you think you are thinking through all the things and you're going to solve the problems at 1 a.m., you're actually not. Your most clarity is happening during the day. So some quick actions to help you start. Externalize your mental load. So write it down. At the end of the day, just make some notes. Even voice record your thoughts before bed. Sometimes that was like the best way to brain dump all the stuff that was running through my mind. Create a cognitive shutdown cue. Our brains, our nervous systems are their happiest when we have a routine, even if it's just one touch point. So, like the same phrase or the same breath ritual nightly. Maybe it's how you put your pajamas on or wash your face at night. It's one thing that just cues to your brain, okay, we are moving into our sleep and our quiet cycle. Another thing is to reduce late night input. So, if you are thinking, I'm just going to check my email real quick on my phone, if you're like, I'm just going to read one more thing on LinkedIn, let me just go look at this next HBR article that I got, and you are in full analytical thinking before you know it. There's some strengths that come with the busy brain, and it's that you're a strategic thinker. You have a lot of foresight. So remember, there are strengths with everything. This is not a deficit approach. The primary disruption for our busy brain owls is that cognitive overactivation. And what helps most is mental offloading and consistent winding down cues. So just because that might be where you are right now, and I know sometimes it feels really hard, you're like stuck in the feeling, those are the things that are going to help you move out of it. So let's talk about our restless roamer. This was my Anna Lane, y'all. She was a restless roamer pretty much my entire life. Her go-to at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning when she couldn't sleep and she had moved all over the house and she ended up in the den on the floor with her legs up on the wall, she would drink a nice hot toddy. That was how she would like finally just get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. And this was so much of her life. But you aren't looping mentally like our busy brain owls. As a restless roamer, your body refuses to land. This is your nervous system being activated. So tossing, turning, waking. This can be, you might experience back pain. You might experience like restless, jumpy legs. A lot of different things can contribute to restless roamer. But even sleeping long doesn't feel restorative for most of our restless roamers. Your system may be sensitive to blood sugar shifts, sensory input, or that autonomic imbalance. So our autonomic system is everything that our body does without us thinking about it, right? Our respiratory, our digestion, all of those things. And that can get disrupted in stress. So an optimum steady state shift that you can make if you're a restless roamer is to have physical calm that you bring in that enables deeper sleep cycles for you. So it's really about the physical approach for our restless roamers. So here's some quick actions that you can take. You can create a body comfort ritual, like weighted blankets, some warm socks, maybe some kind of grounding pressure, like tighten and release your muscles. Support nighttime physiology. So a light protein snack. Make sure you've been fully hydrated. Avoid any spikes between 1 and 4. So make sure that you're cutting out any caffeine and things like that and sugar late in the day. And you want to use a somatic wind down practice. So that means your body, whether it's like slow stretching or slow breathing, things that just allow you and to signal to your body, this is where we're moving into our sleep. And the strength here is that you have an awareness of your physical cues. You're really tuned into your body. That's a good thing, right? And we've got those primary disruptions, and grounding and regulation is really what's going to move the needle for you most. So let's look at our sleep fortress. Oh my goodness. I always think about this as like the big giant castle wall with the moat. This is the sleep fortress because this is like where control becomes the coping strategy. When everything else feels out of control, the more stressed you are, the more burned out you are, sleep fortress really comes in. Because our sleep fortress folks thrive on structure. Routine is your safety. Your consistent patterns is what your nervous system loves. And your sleep deepens when everything aligns. But one disruption, travel, schedule change, a sensory shift, maybe just the temperature in your house changes because of the weather outside, and your system, it wakes up. You tighten control, right? We want to control it. We're going to I'm going to force it to protect the routine. And the effort to protect sleep becomes the stress itself when your sleep gets disrupted in this. So it's just this big catch-22 ball cycle, right? So the optimum steady state shift here is that sleep becomes resilient, not brittle. You become a little bit more adaptive and flexible in ways that work for you. So here's 3 quick actions you can take. Build a portable sleep safety kit, like a mask, a pillowcase, scent cues, anything that you can replicate that signals to you that this is my safe sleep space that you can take with you whenever you travel. That was a huge win for a lot of my clients. Practice micro flexibility. Shift just one small part of your routine at home, like in your regular routine, just shift one thing, because that's going to start to increase your flexibility scale. And then anchor one constant item, your wake time, the morning light, your morning light exposure. So find one anchor point that you use repeatedly, because the strength here is that you're disciplined, you're consistent. That's huge. That's going to actually help you when you start to incorporate some of those things to move into that optimum steady state. Then we have our dreamy drifter. Our dreamy drifter, your rhythm shifts easily. You are like my go with the flow folks, right? Some nights are restorative, others are fragmented. You're sensitive to light, dopamine, energy swings, and stress. Those things show up more than you think. Rigid schedules might feel suffocating to you. You're like, I'm going to do it when I want to do it. I'm just going to feel into it when I feel like going to sleep. Total freedom can be very destabilizing, however, and recovery can be very inconsistent. So your optimum steady state shift here is 1 or 2 gentle rhythm anchors that create reliability without suppressing your flow, right? We don't want to stagnate your go with the flow, but we want to give you something to anchor into that. So you can choose one rhythm anchor. You can avoid over structuring your nights, because a lot of times, sometimes other people try and structure our nights, and that doesn't always work. And then track your patterns without judgment. Just see how you're falling asleep, because your strength here is your adaptability, your flexibility. And that's really an incredible part to what you can do and how you can approach sleep. So we have our balance. This is the final one. We have our balanced, adaptive, resilient, optimum steady state sleeper. This is where you're falling asleep with ease. You stay asleep most nights. You recalibrate if you're disrupted. You even if you have high stress or travel, it doesn't derail you. And I will tell you the truth. I did not think this existed. My sleep had been disrupted for decades. I did not know that this was possible, and I sure as hell did not think it was possible for me. I now sleep, and it is amazing. And this is not a gold star. It's responsibility. Small maintenance keeps your system resilient and flexible. So the optimum steady state shift to kind of keep you in this is to protect stability even during high demand seasons. So preserve your foundations, like if you do morning light exposure, if you have wind down cues or consistent wake cycles. Notice any early signs of sleep disruption. And you want to protect recovery during peaks. So when things are getting a little stressed, you want to really kind of double down on this area. And one of the strengths in this is nervous system resilience and flexibility. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I had the hardest time with when I wasn't sleeping is I was like, okay, everybody's telling me to get better sleep. What the hell? I can't get better sleep. It's not working. I'm tracking my stuff on the damn watch. I am doing the thing on the app. I am putting in the sleep cues and all the things, and it's not working yet. It's not working enough. What the hell do I do? And so at that point, I said, there's got to be something else, because I always believe that there is more than one way to skin a cat. And what I discovered was there are 7 forms of rest and restoration other than sleep. And these are things that we have control and agency over, because sleep can feel like it is out of our control in a lot of ways. And sleep is essential, and we know that those cycles make such a difference, but it's not the only way that we can recharge. So in the unveiling method, we go over 7 forms of rest other than sleep that include mental, emotional, sensory, creative, physical, we call that kinetic rest, social, and even spiritual. Because when these things are missing, sleep becomes more overloaded. Your nervous system wakes even during long sleep periods. Because here's the thing, restoration and sleep actually begin system wide in the day, not just in the night. So there's other ways to approach it if you aren't sleeping. I wanted you to understand that there is another way if you are like, my sleep is so jacked up, I do not even know where to start. So this ties into what Michelle and I teach in our Leadership Performance Intensive in our 4R framework. So in this reclaim, this is where we take ownership of our energy. We recognize that our sleep signals show up early. They're one of the first things to show up. And we're going to release shame about the patterns of not maybe getting enough or not doing it well. And name what your system needs right now. In Renew, this is about sustainable inputs. So support your sleep with daytime micro renewals and avoid the crash recovery and nourish your nervous system. And in Restore, that's about early intervention where we're going to adjust rest before the fatigue accumulates. We're going to use sleep as feedback, not judgment. And we're going to recalibrate. That's long-term sustainability. That's where we're going for in that optimum steady state. We get that long-term sustainability. Because as we update sleep strategies, our leadership evolves. Who we are, our identity, is free to expand, to sometimes maybe get to know who we are as leaders for the very first time. And Michelle's going to talk about some interesting things around this identity piece and what actually happens when we start to get sleep. And we're also going to adjust rhythms with our life seasons, because as we go through each season in our life, our sleep is going to be different. What we require is going to be different. And we're going to design systems around energy, not our effort. So the optimum steady state isn't perfect sleep, it's responsive sleep. Your system telling you what it needs and you listening. I mean, sometimes we don't know what to listen to, and that's why I created the sleep profile assessment. Because sleep is not a behavior issue. And you're going to hear people try and make it out to be this big behavioral problem that's yours, and you have to figure it out. What it really is a regulation signal. Your profile shows how your system tries to recover, that sleep profile assessment. And you can get the snapshot and go see which sleep profile you are. Because your job is to simply listen, to adapt, and to protect it. So Michelle, I know you have got some amazing things to share with us on sleep.
I do. And it's so what I want to share as I'm transitioning into my slides is, first of all, for those of you that know what human design is, put something in the chat so I kind of know and gauge who knows what human design is. If you're a newbie, that's amazing. Put that in the chat. And when I'm talking about human design, it's really taking a lot of what Carol Jean said, and it was me saying, wait a minute, there's something in your chart that plugs into that. Wait, I know that different people have different ways of doing what you just said. And so when we talk about human design, it's really about taking pieces of your specific chart and plugging them into exactly what Carol Jean talked about. So I could totally nerd out on you and go really, really deep in all of them, and we'd be here for a whole nother hour. So there's slides that I want to share with you today, and I did share the full deck in the chat link so that you have it. I'm not going to cover all of them today because I don't think that it's helpful. I'm not going to lie, but I want you to have it because I'm not gatekeeping any of this information. So I'm going to kind of be in flow today and follow up with kind of what Carol Jean was talking about. Because truthfully, as I really started digging into the human design piece of connecting it to sleep, I was like, Carol Jean, sleep is deep. Like, this is complex. This is taking so many things like that about human design, literally flipping it on its side and then adding environment. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm mind blown here. And so what I don't want to do is confuse or complicate things. What I want you to take away from this is how individualized we can get by looking at your chart, what's activated when you sleep, and have some unlocks that you probably would never have heard of before. Some of the things I learned about my sleep chart, I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I have really bad dreams when this happens. I get it now, right? So what I want to walk you through is a few slides here today. and then open some time for questions, is really if a third of our life is spent asleep, it's meant to rejuvenate us, to rest, to have our subconscious kind of kick in and what did we learn today? What are we kind of incorporating as we sleep, right? We spend quite a lot of our time in sleep. So when we're in an awake state in human design, we have 9 centers, 64 gates, and 32 channels. So for those of you that are new to human design is not an assessment. It is based on your birth date, time, and place. So it's a mix of the chakra system, the Kabbalah tree of life, astrology, I Ching, and where the sleep comes into play is quantum physics quite a bit. How your energy connects, how your auras connect. It goes again very deep. So I'm not going to try to lose anybody in it because you can definitely talk about your auras and your decision making, more the lighter things of human design. This one definitely goes deep, which is why kind of we customize this to our intensive because I'm like, I don't think I can teach this. I think I have to do this at a one-on-one level to customize it, right? And so then the fun part is when you are asleep, you go into kind of what human design uses very graphic words sometimes, but I'll say what they are. But they kind of go into mammalian state where you actually only have 5 centers activated. You only have 15 gates and only 6 channels are activated when you sleep. Okay. And so as you're like half of your body's kind of shutting down to renew and restore, and your brain kind of shuts off, you can see here on the chart, some of the full 9 chart, a lot of this starts to shut off. Okay. 70% of us are what's called a type of reflector when we sleep. And that is why a lot of our dreams as a reflector, they can come and go, right? Because that's actually based on the transits in the planets and where things are moving. So it's super interesting. I know people that have really vivid dreams all the time. They actually have certain centers in their sleep pattern that are active. So what Carol Jean is talking about is how do you shut those down so that you may not be able to avoid the dreams, but you can set yourself up for the best source of success. Maybe it's some releasing of some karma, right? Maybe it is some um, kind of routines before you go to bed, but it really is knowing this information can customize it so you don't have to try things that don't work. So many times we can kind of pinpoint different pieces of your chart and it gets a little deep, right? So sleep is kind of when we don't have an inner authority, right? We turn off a lot of our body, which makes sense, right? Holistically. Also, something that really blew my mind when I learned about human design is that truly, if you really want to boil it down to the best night's sleep, we should all sleep alone. No offense to your spouses or your children who want to climb in bed with you, no shame. But if you want the deepest sleep possible, it really is by saying you need to sleep alone where your body can go through its full cleansing cycle. If you're sleeping in the aura of somebody else, that's within about 6 feet, like fully around you, right? So even if you're in a hotel, like Carol Jean said, and let's just say the headboards butt up to each other, you're technically sleeping in someone else's aura because it's kind of like a 6 foot radius around you. I know that goes deep, but like sometimes I sleep great in hotels, other times I don't. So some of this I kind of look at and I go, oh, I wonder if that's why, right? And so some of that aura, if you go in hotels and you have to sleep next to your sister or your brother, like, all of a sudden you got the worst night's sleep ever. It might have triggered some of these electromagnetic channels in your sleep cycle that really disrupted you. It's not normal for you, and that is going to be very disruptive. So again, not to go too nerdy deep with you on this, but your truest rest is when you are just by yourself in your aura and you're letting your body do its thing. Because each of us in our sleep pattern has different gates and centers. Most of us, like I said, have the centers that are open, but those gates, different of those 15 gates are activated. And so that is how you kind of release and fully sleep and restore. So again, this doesn't mean that all the sexy time and cuddle time has to go away. Just means that maybe if you really are struggling with your sleep, try sleeping apart for a week or two, see if that helps, right? If you're really, really dysregulated. Or if your kids are coming into your bed and you're not sleeping well, I mean, that sounds good, right? Like, okay, yeah, of course I'm not sleeping well. My kids are in my bed. But it really could be something deeper than that. It's not just them kicking you and turning like a spin wheel. That's my little guy, right? And so then when we go into the sleep, we actually have different gates that are activated, and there's 3 different planes. So this is where I can kind of get a little deep on you, but there's called an earth, light, they call it demon or dark. Okay, these are the 3 planes that are kind of activated while you sleep. Then we have the different channels that are activated. Again, just in your human design, those are kind of your superpowers. And then there's also little flavors of how you specifically sleep when that thing is activated. Okay. So again, I gave you guys these slides, but they do get a little bit deep, which is why we really want to dive one-on-one with people on this. But I still want to share it because what I want you to know is how deep and specifically we can get into your sleep aura, right? So on the earth plane, think about this. It's all the shit you took in during the week, the day, the month, even the year. You are going to relive that in your conditioning, in your chaos. And you're mixing up the past, present, and future because when you're asleep, your subconscious doesn't really know the difference between past, present, and future or the movie you just watched. So you're going to mix and match whatever's stressing you out, what's activating in your chart for your sleep, right? Which gates do you have out of those 15? And then how is your body going to relive what you did to process how you really feel? Because remember that emotional center turns off. So it's like your body is like, hey, let's relive that horror scene and let's see how we feel at the end. And I want to be like, I know how I'm going to feel terrified. That's called a nightmare. What body? Why are you doing this to me? Right. But if your gates are activated in that earth plane, that really is where some of those dreams of reliving what you're stuck in come up. Okay. And so when you have a dream in the earth plane, again, I'm using words that are probably new to you, but you're going to wake up. And the whole point of why you had that dream was to share it with others and see if they felt the same way or see if they didn't. Funny enough, that is how a lot of problem solving comes out on the earth plane is you actually dream about, have you ever solved a problem in your dream? I have. I literally relived something at work and I woke up with the solution. That was my earth plane being activated. It's a real thing. Okay. Then the next one is on the light fields. Those are different gates for you. And that is on the human design. We have our personality side on the right, the dark purple. And you'll see in all my charts on the left side, you have the light, which is kind of the light purple, I mean, and that is the design body side. So what we're talking about in the light field is your personality crystals, they're called. That is kind of your consciousness. Okay. So this one gets again a little bit deeper and more nuanced, but this is kind of when your dreams are influenced by the kind of the collective consciousness of your personality, who you are. And it's kind of going to drive ideas for change. So depending on, like what the earth plane was for you, you kind of have these moments of like, this is who I am, almost like you wake up with good ideas. That might be your light field being activated while you sleep. And again, these are like ways of your personality and getting lit up and getting good ideas. Sometimes you truly do need to sleep to either solve a problem or kind of good idea, or the dark realm we'll get into just a minute is about the body. So when you wake up from kind of that light field, if that's activated for you in your dreams, that's really about share your dreams and your ideas with others. That's where these sparks of good ideas, like guys, I had this dream about like a unicorn and a mountain and like you were there and you were there. What does that mean? But in all fairness, it's really meant to be like, there's a good idea buried in here. And we're kind of like going into that zone of like figuring out the good idea. But while we sleep, we're trying to do things that we can't when we're normally disrupted in the day life with all of the gates and channels firing. We're like, we need to shut that off and just focus on what we need to. That's what's called the light field when you sleep. And then the dark realm or demon realm, they call it. I don't love that word, but this is about your body. So this is actually about the fact that making sure that your body is ready for sleep. This is where your digestion comes in because you can actually ruin your own sleep by not eating things aligned with your strategy, either too close to bed, too far away from bed. For example, my oldest son is a vampire eater. That means that he only eats after dark. That's how he needs food as he goes into this sleep cycle. And that is going to be how his body restores. Now, other people, my youngest son, he's a daytime eater, go figure. So if he eats all during the day, he kind of almost fasts at night. That's how his body does a lot of this. So again, everybody's different. And as you learn these different gates in your own chart, you're like, oh my gosh, I do that, right? Like you have words to describe something that you probably didn't understand before. And that is when our food actually impacts our dreams because we're actually bringing in these like this is where the dark side comes in, and this really isn't meant to be dark, but it's saying that when you have kind of that dark realm kind of activated through your food and your body and making sure your body, like Carol Jean, is restoring all those proteins and all of that thing, it kind of is a metaphorical like death and transformation. So your body is like, what do I need to clean out right now? And where do I need to transform? So again, when some of these things are disrupted, if you have dreams, you can kind of like put some dream kind of things into this, but it really does have a lot of nuances into how all of this is activated. So what I like to say, oh yeah, no problem. No problem, Meredith. Um, I like to say your sleep is when your subconscious is awake. And that's what all this stuff is. It's kind of like, all right, your body took in a lot today. Now it needs some processing time, right? It needs to turn off the monitor. The processing is still running behind the scenes. And if you can really start to regulate some of this, you are going to have better sleep and feel more rested. Okay. So then if depending on your type, right, in your chart, if you know you're a generator, et cetera, this is how your batteries charge at night. So how are you designed to go to sleep, right? If you're a generator or a manifesting generator, you are what's called an energy type. You are supposed to go to bed when you're exhausted physically and mentally. Okay, little nuances here. So I like to say at the bottom, you guys wake up with, and I say you guys because I'm a projector. I'm not an energy type. So the projectors wake up with like half a battery every morning. And I'm like, I don't love that, but it is what it is, right? I don't make my own energy. So generators wake up with a full battery, so do manifesting generators. So when they go to bed at night, they need to drain their battery all the way down to empty so they can refill it and wake up fully recharged. As a projector, I should go to bed before I'm exhausted, right? Because my body needs to kind of get in that horizontal position, process the day, and I need to kind of get in that sleep cycle before I'm exhausted. Because if I'm exhausted and I don't start, like Carol Jean said, shutting off some of these centers, which I'll show you next a little more quickly, then I won't sleep well. And I only wake up with half a battery to begin with. What the heck, right? And so again, these are profiles that might need more rest during the day or might need more nap. I mean, truly a nap. Like my youngest sister is a manifester. She napped a lot. And I used to think that was really freaking weird. I'm like, how old are you? And you're napping between classes? Like, did you party last night? No. Okay. Like, but now I'm like, oh, you actually did need to nap, but you knew that and you were self-aware enough to know that. But it can literally be right in your chart. How you go to sleep. Manifestors, they have a lot in their mind. They have a lot responsible. So they need to kind of go to bed not feeling like they have to tell everybody what to do. They've gotten all their ideas out. So like Carol Jean said, maybe that's about journaling or getting all those thoughts and ideas out of your head. And then a reflector is a very rare 1% of the population. And the moon cycle really affects it. So that is really about how you need to feel that safe and settled. Okay. And these are the slides I give you, but I'm not going to go through today so we can open it up for questions. But I will just kind of flip through them so that you know different parts. And like, you're like, well, Michelle, how is this connected to human design? And what Carol Jean said, I'm like, right. We don't have time to go through all of this, but I want you to have the info. So if you have a busy brain, that's your head and your ajna kicking in. There are different ways of shutting those down and different habits because we are never supposed to make a decision from the neck up, right? That's what human design teaches us. You have to trust your body to make the decisions with your authority and your strategy, which is what we teach also in the earlier lesson. So it's kind of just knowing which pieces of your chart are probably causing you some headaches, right? If you're restless, that's your spleen and your root center. Those are centers that are just putting pressure and feeling safe, and you just can't feel settled, like Carol Jean was saying. That's really where those two centers come in, and you have these slides. You can refer to them. If you're really disrupted, you can have like that's kind of maybe when your root and your ego, you're like, I'm not worthy of this. Oh my gosh, I have this pressure to get something done. I better not sleep. I better stay up all night and do it because I'm not worthy, right? Oh my gosh, talk about that one. Those are very conflicting energies, especially disruptive to sleep. If you're kind of in that dreamer state, that's when like your self-direction, your emotions, and your root center come into play of like, wait a minute, how does this all kind of come together? Like that's when you can know like, hey, I feel safe. I'm in the right environment. I brought my lavender. You brought your triggers to help you regulate. That's when if you're in this state, again, we can look at all the centers, but Carol Jean's diagnostic really helps pinpoint, oh, let's look at how emotional are you when you're going to bed? maybe you could have a cup of tea to like shut down that solar plexus. That's really going to help you sleep. So you can see how we customize this to get to that optimum state. And then optimum state is really when like your spleen, your emotional center, and your root are all really, really balanced. And that still takes work, right? This isn't like, oh, you figure it out and you're just magical Mary Poppins. You just know how to sleep now, right? It's not quite that easy. You do have to kind of regulate these things to kind of drive and restore your sleep. And so, while I didn't want to get into all the nuances, I wanted you to see like there are centers in your chart that we are going to point to so that you specifically know if your gates is triggering this. Even if I know this might sound a little crazy, but even if you're having really active dreams, we can actually look at what parts of your gate might be causing that. So as the transits are coming through, I actually have looked now, if I've had a bad dream, I look at the transit, I'm like, oh, that's because Saturn was in play. Okay, that's what made that bad dream. That's really weird and crazy that there's a reason for that, right? So when it talks about sleep regulation, when you're awake, you're upright, you have 9 centers, 64, you got a lot going on. And when you go to sleep, while some of that shuts down, you don't have to worry about your throat and your energy center, but you do have to kind of worry, and not worry, that's not the right word I want you to think of when you think of sleep. But when you're regulating it, it's all about, hey, I have these 5 centers. This is what I have to kind of deregulate before I go to bed. And there really is in your chart so many things that can kind of come through that so that you can fully restore. Because even if you're a manifester, a projector, one of the other profiles, that's where maybe sleep isn't enough for you. You are actually, if you wake up with a half a battery, that's where the other 7 forms of rest come in. And that's where Carol Jean has helped me, especially as a projector, be like, Michelle, what about creativity? I'm like, you know what? When I was creative, that was a form of resting my brain, letting my body kind of settle down while my brain kind of got my creative juices flowing again. That was a form of rest for me, right? So it isn't always about taking another nap because if you didn't sleep well in the nap and you just wasted a bunch of time, at least that's how I felt, right? So knowing how to restore yourself is really about balancing all of it. So in the last few minutes, Carol Jean's going to share kind of what our offering is if you want to go deeper on this. But again, the human design piece for me was like, hey, there's so much in your chart that I can tell you and want to tell you, but I don't actually think I can teach a class because unless you have your sleep chart and we've done some of this, it's not really a group setting thing, right? And so that's why it's been such a beautiful way. Like I'm teaching classes. I don't know if I can teach one on sleep because it's so specific to you, right? And that those charts are a little harder to make available. So again, just kind of pairing what Carol Jean talked about so beautifully was like, well, human design has so many answers, but it really is only helpful if you know your specific one. So, Carol Jean, I'll let you take it from here because that's kind of where we've customized a lot of this to build this custom for individuals. Because I got so many questions out of these classes that I was like, oh boy, we're going to have to do something that for people that are ready to go deeper because this is so good. And yet there's so much more to learn. So, Carol Jean, I'll let you take it from here.
Michelle and I just wanted to close with a simple invitation, and that's all this is. It's just an invitation. Because if something in your system recognized itself today, the best way to experience the work that she and I do together through our leadership performance intensives is the mini intensive. And you can choose the focus that matters most to you right now. So, do you want to start with stress? Is maybe complexity something that's really showing up for you? Maybe it's sleep. We have 2 spots that are remaining for our 2025 sessions, and they're going to be available tonight, December 19th. And the link to learn more and book is in the chat. But if you're feeling ready to go deeper, you can also explore our full leadership performance intensive January cohort. And our application is open and it closes on December 31st. That's our deadline. And if you still have questions, Michelle and I are hosting a live Q&A on Tuesday, December 30th at 11 a.m. Central. You can DM either one of us over on LinkedIn if you'd like to join, and we'll shoot over the link for you to join us and ask any questions you have. This work that we do together is about learning how to operate from your optimum steady state and your human design. We love to support you if now is the right time for you.
Mm. So beautifully said, Carol Jean. I'm going to turn off the recording so that if you have any specific questions about what we talked about today, because there's so many resources between grab your human design chart for free, take the sleep assessment for free and start pairing it. But we've realized through even teaching you exactly what we know, there are just still questions. So let me stop the recording and I'd love to field any questions if anybody has something of what we talked about today.